Tell me one true thing, I said to the 3 terrified kids I'd just dragged away from their school concert meltdown. And I'll tell you one back. It was a technique I'd learned in my trauma coursework, and it worked. Sophia whispered that she thought her father forgot about them the way her mother forgot to come back. And my heart cracked clean open. That's why I didn't hear him approach. Didn't sense the shift in the air that apparently every other adult in this building could feel. I was too busy being honest with 3 5-year-olds about death and disappointment to notice that Stefano Barone had arrived and was now standing in the doorway, watching me hold his daughter, while I explained that sometimes cars crash and parents die. And it's not about love. It's about terrible luck and physics. When I finally looked up and met his eyes, dark, unreadable, absolutely focused, he didn't say a word. He just stared at me like he was running calculations in his head, and I had the sudden visceral certainty that I'd just become part of an equation I didn't understand. Then his daughter ran to him, and he caught her without breaking eye contact with me, and I felt heat crawl up my spine, despite every bit of common sense screaming at me to look away first. I didn't look away. "Who are you?" His voice was quiet, controlled, the kind of quiet that made the temperature drop. "And why are you discussing my wife's death with my children?" I stood slowly, keeping my body language open even though my pulse was hammering. Leo and Nico pressed against my legs from behind, and I could feel their shallow breathing. "I'm Cora Hayes, child psychology grad student. I volunteer here for practicum hours." I kept my tone level, professional. "And I'm discussing it because Sophia was having a panic attack in front of 200 people, and no one else was handling it." Something flickered across his face. Not quite anger, darker than that. "Sophia was fine until you—" "Sophia was drowning." I cut him off, and yeah, maybe that was stupid. But I'd spent the last 15 minutes watching 3 kids relive their worst trauma while adults literally walked away. "She asked me if you forgot about them." Leo threw a chair at another student. "Nico hasn't spoken a word since the curtain call was delayed. So no, they weren't fine. They needed someone to tell them the truth, instead of another empty promise that everything's okay." His jaw tightened. The 2 boys behind me went very still. "You don't know anything about my children. I know they're scared." I held his stare. "I know they've been promised their dad would be here on time, and he's 20 minutes late. I know their mother died on her way to an event just like this one, so every time someone's late now, they spiral. And I know that you walking in here angry at me instead of dealing with the actual problem isn't helping them feel any safer." The silence that followed could have shattered glass. Then Stefano Baroni smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. It was the kind of smile that probably preceded a lot of very bad decisions for the people on the receiving end of it. "Step outside with me," he said, not a request. "No." I glanced down at Sophia, who was tucked against his chest but watching me with huge eyes. "Not until someone the kids know and trust is here to stay with them." "Miss Hayes." He said my name like he was tasting it, testing it. "I don't think you understand the situation." "I understand that you're used to people doing what you say." I crossed my arms. "But I'm responsible for these kids' emotional safety right now, and I'm not leaving them with someone who just scared them more than they already were." Leo's hand tightened on my shirt. Stefano noticed. Of course he noticed. His gaze dropped to where his son was literally holding on to me instead of going to him, and something in his expression shifted. Not softening exactly, more like recalculating. "Mrs. Peterson," he called toward the door, and a nervous-looking woman in her 60s appeared almost instantly. "Take the children to the library. Get them water and their favorite books. I'll be there in 10 minutes. Mrs. Peterson nodded so fast I thought her head might fall off. She held out her hands to the triplets, and after a beat, they went to her, but not before all 3 of them looked at me first. I gave a small nod, the kind you give a skittish animal, and only then did Sophia let go of my shirt. She looked back at me twice. Nico whispered something I couldn't hear. Then they were gone, and I was alone in a backstage storage room with a man who looked like he'd been carved from expensive marble and bad intentions. He stepped closer, not threatening but deliberate, claiming space. "Let me be very clear, Miss Hayes." His voice was still quiet, but there was steel underneath. You just told my children that their mother's death was physics and bad luck. You discussed trauma responses with 5-year-olds. You physically removed them from a public space without authorization. And you did all of this without knowing who I am or what consequences that might carry. My heart was pounding, but I kept my voice steady. I did all of that because your children were in crisis, and every other adult here was too scared of you to help them. Scared of me. Terrified. I met his eyes. The teachers saw the triplets breaking down and suddenly remembered they had urgent business elsewhere. The volunteer coordinator literally turned around and walked away. So yes, Mr. Barone, I'm aware that you're someone people are afraid of. I'm also aware that your kids needed help, and I'm trained to provide it, so that's what I did. He studied me for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, he pulled out his phone and made a call. I need a full background check on Cora Hayes. Grad student, likely at the university. I want education, employment, family, debts, everything. 20 minutes. He hung up before whoever was on the other end could respond. Ice slid down my spine. That's standard procedure. He pocketed the phone. You got within arm's reach of my children and discussed their dead mother. I'm going to know everything about you, Miss Hayes. The only question is whether you're going to be honest with me first, or if I'm going to learn it from my security team. I should have been terrified. I was terrified. But I was also angry and tired, and so sick of powerful people acting like their pain gave them permission to steamroll everyone else. Fine, you want honesty? I straightened my shoulders. I'm 26. I'm in my second year of a child psychology master's program, with a focus on trauma and grief. I grew up with parents who made a lot of promises they never kept, so I have strong feelings about adults who let kids down. I work part-time at a bookstore because my assistantship barely covers rent. I need this practicum placement to graduate, which means I need the school to not fire me for overstepping today, which they probably will if you complain. I have $18,000 in student loans, a scholarship that requires a 3.7 GPA, and approximately $60 in my checking account until Friday. I've never been arrested, I don't do drugs, and the most illegal thing I've done recently is keep a library book 3 weeks overdue. I took a breath. Is that enough honesty, or should I also tell you my blood type? Something that might have been amusement crossed his face. Might have been. It was gone too fast to tell. Oh, positive, he said. I blinked. What? Your blood type. If my people are thorough, and they are, I'll know that too. He tilted his head slightly. What I want to know, Miss Hayes, is why someone with $60 and everything to lose just risked her entire career to challenge me in front of my children. Because they needed someone to see them more than I needed to play it safe. The words came out before I could stop them, and the moment they did, I knew I'd said something true. Something that mattered. Stefano Barone went very still. Then he moved closer, close enough that I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. And when he spoke, his voice was different, lower, almost dangerous in a way that had nothing to do with threats. How much do you make at your practicum? What? Your practicum hours, the school placement. How much do they pay you? Nothing. It's unpaid. That's why I work at the bookstore. And how many hours do you need to graduate? 300 supervised clinical hours over 2 semesters. My brain was trying to catch up with wherever this was going. I'm at 72. I'll pay you $5,000 a month to work with my children privately. 20 hours a week, flexible schedule. You'll log the hours under a licensed clinical supervisor I'll hire. Someone legitimate, someone your university will accept. You'll help Sophia, Leo, and Nico process their mother's death, manage their anxiety, and learn to function without constant fear. He paused. You'll also be available for family sessions when needed, and you'll provide recommendations on their school environment, routines, and anything else that affects their emotional well-being. I stared at him. $5,000 a month. That was more than I made in 3 months at the bookstore. That was rent, loans, food, books, everything. That was my entire financial crisis solved. That was also absolutely insane. Mr. Barone, Stefano. Mr. Barone, I repeated, because calling him by his first name felt like stepping over a line I wasn't ready to cross. I appreciate the offer, but I can't. Can't or won't? Both. I forced myself to think clearly despite the way he was looking at me. I don't know you. I don't know what working for you would actually entail. And I'm not stupid enough to think this is just about therapy for your kids. It's exactly about therapy for my kids. His voice was flat, hard. They've been through 4 therapists in 18 months. None of them lasted. None of them helped. You got through to them in 15 minutes. I want to know why, and I want you to do it again. Why didn't the other therapists last? Because they were afraid? He said it simply. They saw my name, my reputation, my world, and they started treating my children like porcelain instead of people. They were so busy trying not to offend me or get too close to anything real that they were useless. And you think I won't be afraid? I think you already looked me in the eye and told me I was failing my children. His mouth curved slightly, not quite a smile. So either you're not afraid, or you're afraid of the right things. My throat was dry. The right things. Letting them down. He stepped back, giving me space I hadn't realized I desperately needed. That's what matters to you, isn't it? Not safety, not money, not even your own career. You're afraid of being another adult who promises to help and then disappears. He just reached into my chest and named the thing I never said out loud. The wound I'd been carrying since I was 7 years old, watching my parents fail to show up for another school play, another science fair, another moment that mattered. That's not fair, I said quietly. No, he agreed. But it's true. He pulled out a business card and held it out. Think about it. You have until tomorrow evening to decide. After that, the offer expires and I find someone else. I took the card. My hands were shaking slightly, and I hated that he could probably see it. What if I say no? Then you say no. He straightened his cuffs. I won't retaliate against your practicum placement. I won't make trouble for you at the university. You'll never hear from me again. He moved toward the door, then paused and looked back. But my children will remember that you were the first person in a long time who saw them clearly and wasn't afraid to tell them the truth. And you'll remember that you had a chance to actually help them and walked away because it scared you. Then he was gone, and I was alone with a business card that probably cost more than my entire outfit, and a decision that felt like standing on the edge of a cliff in the dark. I should have thrown the card away, should have run straight to my advisor and reported the entire interaction, should have done anything except stand there replaying the moment his eyes met mine and my entire nervous system lit up like I'd touched a live wire. Instead, I folded the card carefully and slipped it into my pocket. And when I finally walked out to my car an hour later, there was an envelope tucked under the wiper blade. Inside was a cashier's check for $500 and a note in sharp, precise handwriting. For the overdue library book. Consider it an advance on good faith. SB. I sat in my car and stared at that check until my vision blurred. Because Stefano Barone had just made it impossible for me to pretend this was only about his children. He'd seen me too. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat at my apartment's excuse for a kitchen table with the check and business card laid out in front of me like evidence at a crime scene, trying to logic my way through a decision that had stopped being logical the moment Stefano Barone's eyes met mine. $5,000 a month, 228 hours left on my practicum requirement. 3 kids who needed help more than any children I'd worked with in my training. And one man who'd looked at me like he could see straight through to the broken promises I carried in my bones. By morning, I'd made a list of every reason to say no. By noon, I'd deposited the check because my landlord didn't care about my moral complexity. Only that rent was due in 3 days. By 3 p.m., I was standing outside an office building in the financial district, trying not to throw up. The lobby was all marble and steel. The kind of place where my secondhand blazer felt like a flashing sign that said, "Doesn't belong here." The security guard took one look at the card I handed him, and his entire demeanor shifted. "Ms. Hayes, Mr. Barone is expecting you. 20th floor, suite 2001. The elevator ride lasted exactly 43 seconds. I counted. Stefano's assistant was a woman in her 40s, with sharp eyes and sharper cheekbones, who introduced herself as Grace, and led me through a hallway lined with abstract art that probably cost more than my entire degree. She knocked once on a heavy wooden door, then opened it without waiting for a response. "Ms. Hayes is here. Send her in." Grace stepped aside, and I walked into an office that was somehow both austere and overwhelming. Floor-to-ceiling windows, a desk that looked hand-carved, and Stefano Barone standing with his back to me, looking out at the city like he owned every building in view. He probably did. "Miss Hayes." He turned, and the impact of his full attention in broad daylight was worse than it had been in that dim backstage room. "I wasn't certain you'd come." "I wasn't certain either." I stayed near the door, maintaining distance. "But I have conditions." His eyebrow lifted slightly. "Conditions?" "Yes." I pulled out the notebook where I'd written everything down at 2 a.m., because if I was doing this, I was doing it right. First, I maintain my university placement. I'm not abandoning my program or my other practicum hours. Second, you hire a licensed clinical supervisor who has no financial ties to you and who my university will accept without question. Third, all my sessions with your children are documented properly. I'm not falsifying clinical records or cutting corners. Fourth, you're negotiating with me. He sounded almost amused. You made me an offer. I'm clarifying terms. I met his eyes. Fourth, I set the therapeutic boundaries. If I say the kids need space from something or someone, you listen. If I say a person or environment is harmful to their progress, you take it seriously. And fifth, I took a breath. If at any point I think this arrangement is hurting them more than helping, I walk away and you don't stop me. Stefano crossed the room slowly, deliberately, until he was close enough that I could see the exact moment his expression shifted from assessment to something darker. "Are you finished?" "Yes." "Then let me clarify my terms." His voice dropped. "You work for me, which means you're under my protection. You don't take risks with your safety. You don't go anywhere alone that could be dangerous. If I assign security, you accept it without argument. You also don't discuss my business, my family, or anything you learn in my home with anyone outside your clinical supervisor and your university advisor. Ever." He paused. "And if someone approaches you asking questions about me or my children, you tell me immediately." The temperature in the room had changed. This wasn't the grief-stricken father from yesterday. This was someone else entirely. "What kind of questions?" "Any kind." He held my gaze. "I have enemies, Miss Hayes. People who would be very interested in exploiting any weakness they perceive. My children are the most obvious weakness. You, by proximity, become another one." My stomach dropped. "You're saying I could be in danger just by working with your kids?" "I'm saying I'll make sure you're not." He said it with absolute certainty. "But you need to understand what you're walking into. This isn't a normal family. The threats are real. The precautions are necessary. And if you can't accept that, we end this conversation now." I should have walked out. Should have told him to find someone else. Someone who understood his world and wasn't about to get themselves killed through sheer ignorance. Instead, I thought about Sophia's face when she whispered that her father forgot about them. About Leo throwing chairs because he didn't have words for the grief. About Nico going silent because speaking felt too dangerous. "I accept your terms," I said, "on one condition." I knew I was stepping into something I didn't understand, but the image of 3 kids shaking in a storage room hurt more than the thought of what his world might do to me. "Another condition. You don't lie to me about the danger." I kept my voice steady. "I don't need all the details of your business, but if there's a specific threat to the kids or to me, you tell me. I can't protect them emotionally if I don't know what I'm protecting them from." Something flickered across his face. Respect, maybe. Or surprise that I was still standing here. "Deal." He held out his hand. I hesitated for just a second, then took it. His grip was firm, warm, and the moment our skin touched, that same electric awareness from yesterday slammed through me. His fingers tightened slightly, and I knew he felt it too. Then he released me and stepped back, professional distance restored. "The kids are expecting you this afternoon. Grace has the address." "This afternoon?" I thought. "They haven't stopped asking about you since yesterday." He moved back to his desk, putting physical space between us like he needed it. "Sophia wants to know if you're coming back. Leo told his teacher that you're not scared of Dad. And Nico drew you a picture." My chest tightened. He drew me a picture of you and the three of them in the choir room. Stefano's expression was unreadable. He hasn't drawn anything since his mother died. Oh, Mr. Barone. Stefano. He looked up from whatever he was pretending to read on his desk. If you're going to be part of my children's lives, you use my name. Stefano, I corrected, and his name felt dangerous in my mouth. I need to set expectations. This isn't going to be fast. Grief therapy with children, especially trauma this deep, takes months, sometimes years, and it's going to get worse before it gets better because we'll be bringing up things they've been trying to bury. I understand. Do you? I moved closer to the desk. Because 4 therapists quit, which means either they couldn't handle the pressure or you didn't like what they were telling you, or both. So I need to know, are you actually ready for this? For your kids to be angry and confused and possibly blame you for things? For me to ask you hard questions about your parenting and your choices? Because that's what real therapy looks like. He stood slowly, and suddenly the desk wasn't nearly enough barrier between us. I'm ready for whatever helps my children heal. His voice was low, intense. Even if it means hearing things I don't want to hear. Even if it means changing things I thought were unchangeable. He paused. Are you ready, Miss Hayes, to work with a family that exists in shades of gray instead of the black and white you're probably used to? I grew up in gray, I said quietly. I know what it looks like when people do terrible things for understandable reasons. I know what it's like to love someone and resent them at the same time. So yes, I'm ready. We stared at each other across his desk, and I felt the weight of something shifting, some invisible line being crossed. Grace will drive you to the house, he said finally. I'll meet you there in 2 hours. We'll do the first session together so the kids feel secure. Then you'll work with them individually as needed. Agreed. I turned toward the door, then looked back. And Stefano? Yes? Thank you for trusting me with them. His expression softened just slightly, barely. Thank you for not running. The Barone estate wasn't what I expected. I'd pictured something cold and fortress-like, all concrete and security cameras. Instead, Grace drove us through tree-lined streets to a gated property that looked like it had been designed by someone who actually understood that children needed beauty, not just safety. The house itself was Mediterranean style, warm stone and terracotta roof tiles, with gardens that sprawled in every direction. There was a playground visible in the back, real equipment, not the cheap plastic kind, and what looked like a small soccer field beyond that. It's beautiful, I said without thinking. Grace's expression warmed slightly. Mrs. Barone designed most of it. Mr. Barone hasn't changed anything since she died. That information landed like a weight in my chest. Inside, the house was bright, open, the kind of space where sound traveled and you couldn't hide, which I realized was probably intentional. A woman in her 50s met us in the foyer, Vera, the head of household, and she looked me over with the kind of thorough assessment that told me she'd been protecting these kids long before I arrived. The children are in the playroom, she said, her accent faintly Eastern European. They've been ready since lunch. Ready? Dressed in their best clothes, hair combed. Leo even let me fix his collar without complaint. Her mouth curved slightly. You made an impression, Miss Hayes. My throat felt tight. Can you take me to them? She led me through halls lined with family photos, Stefano and a stunning dark-haired woman, the triplets as babies, beach vacations, birthday parties. Every picture radiated the kind of happiness that made its absence now feel even sharper. The playroom door was open. Inside, 3 5-year-olds sat on a couch that was too big for them, dressed like they were going to a wedding, hands folded in their laps. They looked terrified that I wouldn't show. Hi, I said from the doorway, keeping my voice gentle. I heard someone in here wanted to show me a drawing. Nico's head snapped up. Then he was off the couch and running, and I barely had time to kneel before he crashed into me, arms locking around my neck. Sophia and Leo were right behind him. I held all 3 of them, feeling their small bodies shake with relief, and thought about what Stefano had said. They haven't stopped asking about you since yesterday. I'm here, I murmured into Sophia's hair. I'm not going anywhere. Promise? Her voice was tiny, And there it was. The question that mattered more than any contract or paycheck or professional boundary. I pulled back enough to look at all three of them. I promise that if I ever have to leave, I'll tell you the truth about why, and I'll make sure you have someone else you trust before I go. And I promise that I'll never, ever lie to you about whether I'm coming back. Leo's eyes narrowed. What if you die like Mama? Then it won't be because I didn't try my hardest to stay safe, I said honestly. And it won't be because I didn't care about you. Mama cared about us, Sophia whispered. But she still died. Yes, she did. I didn't sugarcoat it. And that's the worst kind of unfair. But here's the thing. She would want you to keep letting people care about you, even though it's scary. She would want you to keep trusting, even though trust feels dangerous now. How do you know what Mama would want? Nico's voice was small but challenging. Because that's what people who love you always want. I met his eyes. They want you to be brave enough to keep living, even after they're gone. Behind me, I heard the door open, felt the shift in the air. Stefano had arrived, and from the way the kids immediately looked at him, they were waiting to see if he'd shut this down. If he'd tell me I was saying too much, pushing too hard, making it worse. Instead, he moved to where we were clustered on the floor and did something I didn't expect. He sat down with us, not on a chair, on the floor in his $1,000 suit. Like this was the most natural thing in the world. Is Miss Hayes right? He asked his children. Is that what your Mama would want? All three of them nodded. Then that's what we'll do. He looked at me, and something in his expression made my breath catch. We'll be brave enough to keep living. And for the first time since I'd met Stefano Barone, I saw past the ice and control to the man underneath. The father who was drowning in grief just as much as his children were, trying to stay afloat long enough to save them first. Okay, I said, addressing all four of them now. Then here's how this works. We're going to spend time together every week. We're going to talk about hard things, and sad things, and angry things. We're going to play and draw, and sometimes just sit quietly. And we're going to figure out how to remember your Mama without it feeling like you're dying too. What if we can? Leo asked. Then we'll figure out how to live with it hurting a little less. I smiled at him. Either way, we do it together. Sophia reached for my hand. Then Nico did. Then, after a moment's hesitation, Leo. I looked up at Stefano, and he was watching his children hold on to me like I was a lifeline they'd been searching for. His expression was raw, unguarded, and when his eyes met mine, I felt that same electric pull from his office, but deeper now, more dangerous. Because this wasn't just physical attraction anymore, this was recognition. Two people who'd both learned too young that promises get broken, trying to figure out how to keep the ones they'd just made to three kids who desperately needed us not to fail. Miss Hayes stays for dinner, Stefano said, his voice rough. It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. I'd like that. Dinner was chaos in the best possible way. The kids had opinions about everything, what I should eat, where I should sit, what stories I needed to hear about their day. Vera served pasta that tasted like someone's grandmother had poured love directly into the sauce. And for 2 hours, I almost forgot that this family existed in a dangerous world. Almost. Because halfway through dessert, Stefano's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his entire expression changed. Locked down, went cold. Vera, take the children upstairs for bath time. His tone left no room for argument. The kids knew that voice. They went without protest, but Sophia looked back at me once, anxious. Then we were alone in the dining room, and Stefano was standing, his body language shifted into something predatory. What's wrong? I asked. Someone took photos of you leaving my office building this afternoon. He turned his phone toward me, and there I was on the screen, walking out of the lobby, clear as day. They were sent to a journalist who covers organized crime. My blood went cold. What does that mean? It means someone's already watching you. His jaw was tight. It means they're trying to figure out who you are and how they can use you. Use me for what? Leverage, information, pressure. He pocketed the phone. This is what I meant about protection, Cora. This is the world you just entered. He'd used my first name. I noticed even through my panic. What do we do? I handle it. He moved closer. But you need to be more careful. No more walking alone. No more predictable routines. And if anyone approaches you with questions, you shut it down and call me immediately. This is insane. This is reality. His voice softened slightly. I'm sorry. I knew this might happen, but I'd hoped we'd have more time before they noticed you. They. I forced myself to focus. Who exactly are they? Stefano hesitated, and I could see him calculating how much to tell me. The truth, I reminded him. That was the deal. Rivals. People who want what I have or want to see me fail. He ran a hand through his hair, and it was the first time I'd seen him look even slightly disheveled. One in particular, Vincenzo Romano. He's been trying to take my territory for 2 years. He's violent, unpredictable, and he has no moral boundaries. And he'd hurt me to get to you? He'd hurt anyone. Stefano's eyes were hard, which is why you don't go anywhere alone starting tomorrow. I'm assigning someone to you. A bodyguard? A driver who's also trained in security. Her name is Lena. She'll get you to class, to work, to here. You'll get used to her. I wanted to argue, wanted to say this was too much, too fast, too invasive. But I thought about those photos, about someone watching me, tracking my movements, seeing me as a weakness to exploit. Okay, I said quietly. I'll accept the security. Something in Stefano's expression eased. Thank you. But I need something in return. His eyebrow lifted. More conditions? Information. I held his gaze. If I'm in danger because of the kids, I need to know what specific threats exist. Not your business details, but enough that I can help keep them safe. Enough that I'm not walking blind. He studied me for a long moment. Then he nodded. Come with me. He led me to a room off the main hall, an office that was clearly his home workspace. He closed the door, then pulled out a file and handed it to me. This is everything you need to know about the current threat situation. I opened it. Inside were photos, documents, timelines. And there, at the center of it all, was Vincenzo Romano's face. Cold eyes, cruel mouth. He wants your territory. He wants me destroyed. Stefano's voice was flat. And he's smart enough to know that the fastest way to break me is through my children. Has he tried before? Twice. Both times we caught his people before they got close. But he's getting bolder. Stefano's hand clenched on the desk. That's why I need you, not just for therapy, for your eyes. You see things with the kids that my security team misses. You notice when they're scared, when something's wrong, when someone's making them uncomfortable. You want me to be part of your security system. I want you to be their advocate, he corrected. Someone whose only job is their well-being, not territory or business or reputation. Someone who'll tell me the truth even when it's inconvenient. I looked at the file, then at him. This is a lot more than I signed up for. I could have handed the folder back, told him I wanted the practicum and nothing more, gone back to kids whose parents didn't come with enemies attached. I didn't move. I know. He moved closer, and suddenly the office felt very small. If you want to walk away, do it now, before you're in any deeper. Before what? His eyes met mine, and the air between us went electric. Before this becomes something neither of us can walk away from. My heart was pounding. Stefano. A knock on the door interrupted us. Grace's voice from the other side. Sir, the call you were expecting. Stefano's jaw tightened, but he stepped back. I have to take this. Lena will be at your apartment at 7 a.m. tomorrow. Don't leave before then. Okay. He moved toward the door, then paused. Cora? Yes? You did well with them today. His voice was rough. Better than well. You gave them something I haven't been able to give them in 18 months. What's that? Hope. Then he was gone, and I was standing in his office, holding a file full of threats, wondering what the hell I'd just gotten myself into, and knowing, despite everything, that I was exactly where I needed to be. Lena turned out to be a woman in her early 30s, with a scar along her jawline, and the kind of calm competence that made me feel safer just sitting next to her. She drove a black SUV with tinted windows and didn't ask questions about my life, which I appreciated. What I didn't appreciate was how quickly my world started feeling like a cage. 2 weeks into the arrangement, I'd fallen into a rhythm that should have felt normal, but didn't. Lena picked me up every morning. I went to classes, then to the bookstore for my shifts, then to the Barone estate 3 afternoons a week. My university advisor approved the clinical supervisor Stefano hired, a woman named Dr. Sarah Hank, who had an impeccable reputation and absolutely no ties to organized crime. My practicum hours were adding up. My rent was paid. The kids were making real progress. Everything should have been fine, except I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Not by Lena or Stefano's security, by someone else. Someone who stayed just out of sight but left traces. A car that appeared too often. A man at the bookstore who asked too many casual questions. Small things that added up to a pattern I couldn't ignore. I told Stefano during our 3rd week working together. We were in his home office after a session where Sophia had finally cried about her mother, really cried. Not the silent tears she usually hid, and I was emotionally wrung out. "There's someone watching me," I said without preamble. "Not your people, someone else." Stefano looked up from his laptop, his expression sharpening instantly. "Where?" "Campus, the bookstore, my apartment building twice." I pulled out my phone and showed him the notes I'd been keeping. Same blue sedan, different drivers, but the car keeps appearing. He studied my notes, and something dark crossed his face. "This is Romano. He's trying to establish your patterns." "Why?" "Because if he can predict where you'll be, he can get to you." Stefano stood, already pulling out his phone. "You're not going back to your apartment. Pack what you need tonight. Lena will take you. You're staying here until we handle this." My stomach dropped. "I can't just move into your house." "You can, and you will." His tone left no room for negotiation. "Romano doesn't make moves like this unless he's planning something. I'm not giving him the opportunity." "Stefano." "Cora." He moved around the desk, and suddenly he was close enough that I could see the tension in his jaw, the fear he was trying to control. "Please, I can't." He stopped, then started again. "I can't lose anyone else, especially not because I underestimated the threat." The rawness in his voice cut through every argument I'd been about to make. "Okay," I said, quietly. "I'll stay." Relief flickered across his face, but it was gone before I could be sure I'd seen it. "I'll have Vera prepare a room in the family wing, near the children." "The family wing?" "My private quarters and the kids' rooms are separate from the guest areas." He was already texting someone, multitasking in that way he did when he was trying not to feel too much. "You'll have your own space, but you'll be close if the kids need you at night. They still have nightmares." I thought about Sophia waking up scared, about Leo's night terrors, about Nico's silence that sometimes stretched for hours after a bad dream. "Do they come to you?" "Sometimes." He pocketed his phone. "Not as much as they used to. I think they're afraid of burdening me. Or they're afraid you'll shut down if they show too much emotion." His eyes snapped to mine. "Excuse me." "You do this thing," I gestured at him. "When feelings get intense, you go cold. Lock everything down. The kids see it, and they're learning to hide what they feel so they don't trigger that response in you." "I'm protecting them." "You're teaching them that emotions are dangerous." I kept my voice gentle but firm, which is the opposite of what they need right now. They need to see you grieve. They need to know it's okay to fall apart sometimes. "I can't fall apart." His voice was tight. "If I fall apart, everything falls apart." "That's the lie you're telling yourself." I moved closer. "But the truth is, you're so busy holding everything together that you're not actually with them. You're managing them. And they can feel the difference." For a moment, I thought he might shut me out. Shut this down, prove my point by going cold and ending the conversation. Instead, he sank into his desk chair, like the weight of what I'd said had physically hit him. "I don't know how to do this," he said quietly. "Any of this. I don't know how to be their father without her. I don't know how to keep them safe and let them feel at the same time. I don't—" He stopped, breathed. "I don't know how to grieve for her when I'm so angry at her for leaving." Oh, there it was. The wound underneath everything else. I knelt beside his chair so we were at eye level. "You're allowed to be angry. She died. I can't be angry at her for dying." "Yes, you can." I held his gaze. "You can be devastated and furious at the same time. You can miss her and resent her and still love her. That's what grief is. All the contradictions at once, and no way to make them make sense." his hand curled into a fist on the desk. The kids are angry too. Sophia's acting out at school. Leo's fights aren't just about other kids annoying him. Nico went silent because speaking felt like admitting she's really gone. I kept my voice steady. They need you to show them that anger doesn't make the love less real, that you can be furious at someone for dying and still honor their memory. How? By being honest. I reached out without thinking and covered his fist with my hand. Tell them you're angry. Tell them you don't have all the answers. Tell them that you're figuring this out together, and it's okay that none of you know how yet. His eyes dropped to where my hand covered his, and I felt the moment the air between us changed, shifted from therapeutic distance to something far more dangerous. Cora. My name sounded different in his voice, rougher. You need to move your hand. Why? Because if you don't, I'm going to do something that crosses every professional boundary you've set. My heart was pounding. I should have pulled away, should have stood up and restored the distance. Instead, I asked, what if I don't want to move it? His eyes met mine, dark and intense, and I saw him warring with himself, saw the moment control won. You're here for my children, he said, but his hand had turned under mine, fingers curling around my wrist like he needed to hold on. Not for this. I know. Then you understand why we can't. I understand that you're terrified of wanting something for yourself instead of just surviving for them. I didn't look away. But that doesn't make wanting it wrong. It makes it dangerous. His thumb brushed against my pulse point, and I knew he could feel how fast my heart was beating. Everything I touch in my world gets complicated, gets threatened, gets used as leverage against me. I'm already threatened. I'm already leverage. I leaned closer. That happened the moment I walked into your children's lives. So what are we really afraid of here? For one breath, two, I thought he might close the distance, might stop fighting whatever was building between us and just let it happen. Then his phone rang, sharp and intrusive, and the moment shattered. He released my wrist and answered without looking at the screen. What is it? I couldn't hear the response, but I watched his expression change. Go hard. When? A pause. How many? Another pause. Then, lock down the estate. Full security protocol. I'm bringing Cora and the kids to the safe room now. He hung up and was already moving, pulling me to my feet. Romano's people just hit one of my warehouses. This is a distraction. The real target is here. Ice flooded my veins. The kids are in the playroom with Vera. We get them, we secure them, then we wait this out. He was already heading for the door. His entire demeanor shifted into something lethal. Stay behind me. Do exactly what I say. Understand? Yes. We moved through the house fast but controlled. I could hear shouting in the distance, security mobilizing, and then we were at the playroom, and Vera already had the kids clustered together, their faces pale with fear. Mama died like this, Sophia whispered when she saw us. Something bad happened, and then she didn't come back. Stefano froze for just a second. I saw it hit him, then he dropped to their level. That's not happening tonight. We're going somewhere safe, and we're all staying together, I promise. You promised Mama would come back, Leo said, his voice breaking. I know. Stefano's voice cracked, and for the first time since I'd met him, I saw him let the mask slip in front of his children. I know I did, and I hate that I couldn't keep that promise. But this one I can keep. We're staying together tonight, all of us. Nico looked at me. You too? Me too, I said firmly. We moved as a unit, Stefano leading, Vera and I with the children, 2 security guards flanking us. The safe room was behind a hidden panel in Stefano's bedroom, reinforced steel disguised as a bookcase. Inside was bigger than I expected, with supplies, communications equipment, and enough space that it didn't feel like a tomb. The kids huddled together on a couch. Vera sat with them, murmuring reassurances. Stefano was on the phone speaking in rapid Italian, coordinating with his people, and I stood there trying not to let the children see how terrified I was. It took an hour of waiting, of distant sounds that might have been gunfire or car engines or my imagination. An hour of Sophia crying quietly while her brothers held her hands. An hour of watching Stefano become someone I'd only glimpsed before. Cold, calculating, absolutely ruthless. Finally, his head of security called. It's clear. They were testing our response time. Didn't breach the inner perimeter. Stefano's jaw was tight. Casualties? One of ours injured. None of theirs caught. They retreated before we could engage. Find out how they knew to hit tonight. He ended the call and turned to face us. The kids, Vera, me. His eyes lingered on me longest. It's safe, he said. We can go back upstairs. But nobody moved, because we all understood what this meant. This wasn't theoretical anymore. The danger wasn't something distant that might happen someday. It was here. It was now. It was real. I want my mama, Sophia said into the silence. And Stefano, controlled, powerful Stefano, folded. He crossed to his children, dropped to his knees, and pulled all three of them into his arms. I want her too, he said, his voice breaking. I want her back so much it feels like I can't breathe sometimes. And I'm so angry at her for leaving us, and so angry at myself for not protecting her, and I don't know how to fix any of it. The kids went very still. Vera's eyes were bright with tears. But here's what I do know, Stefano continued, his hand stroking Sophia's hair. Your mama loved you more than anything, and she would be so proud of how brave you're being, how you're learning to live even when it hurts, how you're letting people like Miss Cora help us figure this out. Leo pulled back slightly. Are you scared? Terrified, Stefano admitted. Every single day, scared something will happen to you. Scared I'm doing everything wrong. Scared you'll grow up and realize I failed you. You didn't fail us, Nico said. Nico, who barely spoke most days, and his small voice cracked something open in the room. Neither did Mama, Sophia added. Stefano's eyes closed briefly. No, she didn't. She loved you with everything she had. And what happened wasn't her fault or mine or anyone's except the person who caused that accident. I watched him give his children what I'd told him they needed. Honesty, vulnerability, permission to feel all the complicated things. And I watched them lean into it, into him, with a trust that had been fractured finally starting to heal. When they finally pulled apart, Sophia looked at me. Will you stay with us tonight? If your dad says it's okay, yes. Stefano nodded. Cora's room is right next to yours. She's not going anywhere. We got the kids settled eventually, all three in Sophia's room, because none of them wanted to be alone. Vera stayed with them until they fell asleep, and then it was just Stefano and me in the hallway outside their rooms. Thank you, he said quietly, for what you said earlier, about grief and anger. I think I needed to hear it even more than they needed to see it. You did well with them. I leaned against the wall, exhausted. That was real. That was what they needed. Because of you, he moved closer. You keep showing me how to do this, how to be their father instead of just their protector. You're already both. I'm trying to be. His hand came up, almost touching my face, then dropped. But tonight made something clear. What's that? That I can't keep you safe and keep my distance at the same time. His voice was low, intense. And I don't know which one matters more anymore. My breath caught. Stefano? Don't. He stepped back, and I could see him rebuilding the walls. Don't make this harder than it already is. You're here for the kids. That has to be enough. What if it's not? He looked at me for a long moment, and I saw everything he wasn't saying. Want, fear, impossibility. Then we're both in trouble, he said finally. Because I stopped being able to lie to myself about what I feel for you the moment you held my children and told them the truth about grief. Before I could respond, he turned and walked away, leaving me alone in the hallway with my heart racing and the taste of almost on my lips. I went to my room, the one near the kids, just like he'd promised, and lay awake for hours, thinking about electric touches and interrupted moments, about a man who was teaching me that protection and control weren't the same thing as care, about 3 kids who were healing because someone finally had the courage to be honest with them, and about the danger that was circling closer, looking for weaknesses to exploit. I fell asleep thinking about Stefano's voice. Then we're both in trouble. We were. But I was starting to think trouble might be exactly where I needed to be. The next morning, everything felt different. The kids came to my room at dawn, all three of them piling into my bed like it was the most natural thing in the world. And we stayed there talking until Vera came to collect them for breakfast. Over the next few days, I learned the rhythms of living in the Baroni estate. Morning sessions with the kids while Stefano worked. Afternoons where he'd join us for family time. His therapist assigned homework that he approached with the same intensity he probably used in business negotiations. Evening debriefs in his office where we'd discuss the kids' progress. And I'd try very hard not to notice how he looked at me when he thought I wasn't paying attention. We didn't talk about what he'd said that night. We didn't talk about the almost touches or the way the air changed when we were alone together. We were professionals. We were careful. We were also lying to ourselves. 3 weeks after I moved into the estate, I was in the library looking for a book Sophia had requested when I overheard Stefano on a call. His office door was cracked open, and his voice carried, "I don't care what it costs. Romano doesn't get near my family." A pause. "No. We handle this my way. Financially, legally, systematically. I want him destroyed, but I want it done without bodies. Without more blood that my children have to learn to live with." Another pause, longer this time. "Because I'm not that man anymore." His voice was quieter now. "I can't be that man and be the father they need. So we do this the hard way. We do it clean." I heard papers shuffling, then, "And double the security on Cora. I don't care if she complains about it. Romano's too quiet lately, which means he's planning something. She's not leaving the estate without a full detail." My heart clenched. He was changing how he operated, changing the rules of his entire world, because of his children, because of what I'd told him about who they needed him to be. I should have moved away, should have given him privacy. Instead, I stood frozen as his next words drifted through the open door. "No, don't tell her I said that. She already thinks I'm too controlling." A soft exhale that might have been a laugh. "She's probably right, but I'm not apologizing for keeping her safe. Not when she's become—" He stopped abruptly. "It doesn't matter what she's become," he said finally. "Just handle Romano. I want this finished." I slipped away before he could catch me listening, my mind spinning. What she's become. What had I become to him? More than the kid's therapist, clearly. More than just another employee in his world. But how much more? And what did it mean that he was changing his entire approach to his business because of the person I was teaching him to be? I was still thinking about it that afternoon when the threat finally materialized in a way none of us expected. I was in the garden with the kids, a rare moment where Stefano had agreed they could play outside with full security watching. When Sophia's ball rolled toward the fence line, she ran after it, laughing, and I was smiling at how much lighter she'd become over these weeks. Then I saw him, a man near the fence, not security, wrong posture, wrong positioning. He was watching Sophia with an intensity that made my stomach drop. "Sophia, stop!" I called out, already moving. She froze, looked at me, then looked toward the fence and saw what I'd seen. Her face went white. "That's the man," she whispered when I reached her. "The one from school. The one who said he knew Mama." Shame hit me hard and sharp. Romano had gotten close enough to speak to her, and none of us had seen it. Not me, not security, not Stefano. For a man who built his life on control, this would feel like the worst kind of failure. Ice flooded my system. What man from school? He came to talk to me last month. He said he was Mama's friend and wanted to make sure we were okay. Her voice was shaking. "I didn't tell Daddy because he gets scary when people talk to us." Oh God. Romano had gotten to them, had made contact before any of us realized. "Leo, Nico," I called them over, keeping my voice calm. "We're going inside now. Quick game. Whoever gets to the house first wins." They ran. I herded them in, then immediately found the head of security. Man at the east fence, Sophia recognized him from a previous contact at school. This is Romano's inside approach. He's been grooming them. 5 minutes later, the man was gone. Security had moved too fast for him to do anything but retreat. But the damage was done. When Stefano found out, when I had to tell him that Romano had been talking to his daughter for weeks and none of us knew, I watched something in him fracture. He touched her. His voice was deadly quiet. "No, just talked. But she didn't tell anyone because she thought you'd be upset. Upset. He looked at me, and his eyes were hollow. My daughter thought I'd be too scary to tell that a strange man was approaching her. What does that say about me? It says you've been teaching them that threats are everywhere and trust is dangerous. I kept my voice gentle. But we can fix this. We can teach them the difference between real danger and safe adults. Can we? He cut me off. Because it seems like every time I think I'm doing better, I discover another way I've failed them. You haven't failed them. Then why didn't she come to me? His voice broke. Why did she keep this secret for a month? Because she's 5 years old and she's trying to protect you from worry the same way you try to protect her from fear. I moved closer. This isn't about failing. This is about learning. All of you. He stared at me for a long moment, and I saw him make a decision. I need to end this with Romano, now, before he gets any closer to them. How? His expression went cold. The way I should have from the beginning, by removing him from the board entirely. My stomach clenched. What does that mean? It means I'm done playing defense. He was already pulling out his phone. He wants a war. He'll get one. Stefano, wait. No. He looked at me, and for the first time since I'd met him, I saw fury override everything else. You don't understand what men like Romano are capable of. If I don't stop him now, he'll take my children. He'll hurt them in ways that therapy can't fix. So I'm sorry if this isn't the measured, controlled response you want from me, but I'm doing what I have to do. By becoming the man you said you weren't anymore, that stopped him. His hand tightened on his phone. By doing what's necessary to keep them safe, he said finally. Even if it teaches them that violence is the answer, that control through fear is acceptable. I stepped closer. You just spent 3 weeks learning to show them vulnerability and honesty. Don't throw that away because you're scared. I'm not scared. I'm realistic. You're terrified. I met his eyes. You're terrified that no matter what you do, you'll lose them the way you lost her. But reacting with violence won't change that. It'll just prove to them that the world is exactly as dangerous as they fear. Then what do you suggest? His voice was harsh. That I wait patiently while Romano plans his next move? That I trust the system to protect them when the system doesn't touch people like him? I suggest you be strategic instead of reactive. I held his gaze. Use what you have, money, connections, information, to corner him legally, financially. Make him irrelevant without making yourself into the monster he is. That takes time. So does therapy, so does healing, so does teaching your children that there's a difference between strength and brutality. I paused. They're watching you, Stefano. Every choice you make teaches them what kind of man you are, what kind of men they might become. Is this the lesson you want to give them? The silence stretched between us. Finally, he set his phone down. What you're asking requires me to trust that there's a way to win that doesn't involve destroying him physically. Yes, I've spent 20 years learning that trust gets people killed. And I've spent my whole life learning that control without connection destroys everything you're trying to protect. I moved closer. Trust me. Trust that there's another way. Let me help you find it. He looked at me like I was asking him to jump off a cliff. Maybe I was. 1 week, he said finally. You have 1 week to show me there's a viable alternative. After that, I do this my way. 1 week to prove that information could do what bullets couldn't. 1 week to keep him from becoming the man he used to be. It wasn't agreement. It wasn't even compromise. But it was a chance. 1 week, I confirmed. Then I went to work figuring out how to save a mafia boss from himself. I spent that week doing something I never imagined I'd do. I became a detective in a criminal empire. Not alone. Stefano gave me access to his financial analysts, his lawyers, his security intelligence. What he didn't give me was faith that this would work. Every morning I saw it in his eyes, the calculation of how many days I had left before he stopped waiting and started destroying. But I also saw something else. Hope, fragile and buried deep, but there. He wanted me to be right. The breakthrough came on day 5, and it came from the kids. I was doing art therapy with Nico. He'd been drawing more since the lockdown, processing fear through images, when he drew something that made me stop cold. A man. Dark suit. distinctive scar across his hand shaped like a hook. "Who's this?" I asked carefully. "The nice man." Nico didn't look up from his drawing. "The one who gave Sophia the bracelet." My blood went cold. "What bracelet?" 10 minutes later, I was in Stefano's office with a child's drawing and a piece of information that changed everything. Romano gave Sophia a bracelet. I laid the drawing on his desk. "Nico drew this scar. It's distinctive enough that your people might be able to identify exactly which of Romano's men made direct contact." Stefano was already on his phone. "Send me every photo we have of Romano's known associates. Focus on hand injuries or distinctive scars." He had a match within an hour. Marco Vieri, Romano's head of security, and the same man who'd been at the fence line. But more importantly, when Stefano's financial team traced Vieri's background, they found something Romano probably didn't know. Vieri had a sealed juvenile record, and sealed records could be unsealed with the right legal pressure. "What was he arrested for?" I asked. Stefano's expression was grim. "Assault of a minor. He was 17, victim was 12. Charges were pleaded down because of his age." My stomach turned. "Romano has a known child predator working security, approaching children. And if we expose that..." Stefano's eyes met mine, and I saw the exact moment he understood. "We don't have to destroy Romano with violence. We destroy him with information. His own people will turn on him," I said. "Even in your world, there have to be lines. Using someone with that history around children crosses them. It does." Stefano was already making calls, his voice clipped and controlled. "And when Romano's partners learn he knowingly employed Vieri, that he sent him after my children, they'll remove him themselves. He becomes too much of a liability." I watched him work, watched him coordinate a takedown that involved lawyers and financial pressure and information warfare instead of guns and threats. It was brutal in its own way, methodical, surgical, absolutely ruthless. But it wasn't the violence he'd been ready to unleash a week ago. "You did this," he said hours later after the wheels were fully in motion. "You found another way." "Nico found it. I just recognized what it meant. Because you were paying attention to them." He moved around the desk, and suddenly we were sharing the same air, the same space. "Because you see things no one else does. Stefano, I need to tell you something." His voice was rough. "When I asked you to find an alternative, I didn't actually believe you could. I was giving you an impossible task because I wanted to be right about the world, about how it works, what it requires. And now? Now I think I've been wrong about a lot of things." His hand came up, fingers brushing my jaw. "About control, about protection, about what it means to keep people safe." My breath caught. "What does it mean?" "It means trusting them to be part of the solution instead of just shielding them from the problem." His thumb traced my cheekbone. "It means letting someone see you completely, even the parts you're ashamed of, and believing they won't run." "I'm not running." "You should," but he didn't step back. "You should get as far from me and this life as possible." "Why aren't you making me?" His eyes darkened. "Because I stopped being able to pretend I don't need you somewhere around the second week you were here. And by the fourth week, I stopped wanting to pretend." The air between us was electric, charged with weeks of almost touches and interrupted moments. Every conversation where we'd stepped right up to the line and forced ourselves back. Every time his hand had lingered a second too long. Every look that said everything we weren't allowing ourselves to speak. "The kids," I started, "are asleep. Vera's with them." His forehead dropped to mine. "For once it's just us. No crisis, no interruption. Just the question neither of us has been brave enough to answer." "What question?" "What happens if we stop fighting this?" My heart was pounding so hard I could barely breathe. "Stefano, I work for you. I'm your children's therapist. There are boundaries." "I know." His hand slid into my hair. "I know every reason this is complicated. Every way this could go wrong. Every professional line we'd be crossing." "Then why?" "Because you walked into my life and made me want to be a better man. Not just for my children, but for myself." His voice dropped lower. "Because you challenge me and see me and don't flinch from either the violence I'm capable of or the grief I'm drowning in. Because somewhere in the last 8 weeks, you stopped being just my children's therapist and became the person I think about when I wake up and the last person I want to see before I sleep. I was shaking. I can't be your therapist and I know, so we figure it out. His thumb brushed my lower lip. We establish new boundaries. We bring in another therapist for the kids. We do whatever we have to do to make this right. But Cora? My name sounded like a prayer. Please tell me I'm not alone in this. I should have stepped back. Should have been the professional, the responsible one. The person who maintained boundaries even when it hurt. Instead, I closed the distance between us and kissed him. It wasn't gentle. It was weeks of tension and denial and want finally given permission to exist. His hands tightened in my hair, pulling me closer, and I felt the control he'd been maintaining for so long finally fracture. My back hit the edge of his desk, and he pressed against me, bodies aligned in a way that made coherent thought impossible. Cora, he said my name against my lips, my jaw, my throat. Tell me to stop. No. I pulled him closer, fingers tangling in his shirt. Don't stop. His mouth found mine again, deeper this time, and I tasted desperation and need and something that felt dangerously close to devotion. His hands slid to my waist, my hips, pulling me up onto the desk so he could step between my legs. And the sound I made was somewhere between a gasp and a plea. We should talk about this, he murmured against my throat, even as his hands mapped my body through my clothes. Figure out the logistics. Later, I tugged his head back up so I could kiss him again. Talk later. Later, he agreed, and pulled me off the desk. He laced his fingers through mine and led me through the quiet house to his bedroom. We fell onto his bed together, a tangle of limbs and want, and his weight pressing me into the mattress felt like the answer to a question I'd been afraid to ask. You're sure? He pulled back enough to look at me. Because once we do this, I'm sure. I pulled him back down. I've been sure since the night you sat on the floor with your children and let them see you break. Something in his expression cracked open. You're going to ruin me. Good, I kissed him. You've been too controlled for too long. Then we stopped talking, and there was only skin and breath, and the sound of fabric sliding to the floor. His hands on me, learning, exploring, finding every place that made me gasp. My hands on him, mapping scars and muscle and the places he was vulnerable despite all his power. His shirt came off, then mine. His hands slid beneath my waistband, and I arched into the touch, into him, into the promise of what came next. And then I felt it, the weight of what we were about to do, not just physically, but what it meant. I was still his children's therapist, still living in his house under an arrangement that existed because of them, still bound by professional ethics that I'd spent years learning to respect. And if we did this, if we crossed this line before those boundaries were properly restructured, I wouldn't just be bending the rules. I'd be breaking something fundamental about who I was. Wait. The word came out broken. Stefano, wait. He froze immediately, his body going still above me. What's wrong? I can't. My voice was shaking. We can't. Not yet. Not like this. He pulled back, and I saw confusion war with concern on his face. Cora, if you don't want this, I do want this. I sat up, trying to cover myself, trying to think through the haze of desire. I want you so much it terrifies me, but I'm still their therapist. I'm still living here in a professional capacity, and if we do this now, before we've properly transitioned that role, before we've established real boundaries, I stopped, forced myself to breathe. I'll have compromised everything I believe about ethics and care and keeping the kids' needs first. Understanding dawned in his eyes, then something that looked like respect. You're right. He handed me my shirt, his movements careful, controlled. God, you're right. I wasn't thinking. You were thinking. We both were. I pulled my shirt on with shaking hands. We were just thinking about us instead of them, and that's exactly the problem. He sat on the edge of the bed, running both hands through his hair. So what do? We do this right. I moved to sit beside him, close, but not touching. We transition the kids to Dr. Hank completely. We restructure my role here to something that doesn't create a conflict of interest. We wait until those boundaries are clear and established before I gestured at the bed. Before we make this physical. That could take weeks. I know. I don't know if I can be around you every day and not. He stopped, jaw tight. This is going to be torture. Yes, I agreed. But it's the right kind of torture, the kind that means we're putting them first. I finally let myself touch him, my hand covering his. And when we finally do this, we'll know it's not just desire, it's choice. Real choice, made with clear eyes and clean consciences. He turned his hand under mine, fingers lacing together. You're remarkable, you know that? I'm terrified I just ruined everything. You didn't. He brought our joined hands to his lips, kissed my knuckles. You just showed me, again, what it means to have integrity, even when it costs you something you want. We sat there for a long moment, breathing together, letting the heat between us settle into something different, something deeper. So we wait, he said finally. We wait. I leaned my head on his shoulder. But that doesn't mean we're not together. It just means we're being intentional about how we build this. He shifted so he could look at me. Can I still kiss you, or is that crossing a line? I smiled despite everything. Kissing is probably okay, just maybe not in bedrooms late at night when we're half-dressed and have terrible impulse control. Fair. He kissed me then, soft and careful, a promise instead of a claim. Thank you. For stopping us? For caring enough about them, about all of us, to do the hard thing. His forehead touched mine. For being the person who keeps me honest. He lay back on the bed and pulled me down beside him, fully clothed now, just holding me against his chest. Stay, he said. Just to sleep. I want to know what it feels like to wake up with you here. Okay, I whispered. Just to sleep. We lay there in the dark, his arms around me, and I felt the rightness of it settle into my bones. Cora? His voice was rough with exhaustion. Yeah? When we finally do this, when all the boundaries are clear and everything's in place, I'm going to make it worth the wait. Heat flooded through me. That's not helping with the impulse control. Good, I could hear the smile in his voice. Suffer with me. I fell asleep feeling safer than I had in years. Morning came with the sound of small feet and excited voices. We woke tangled together, and the kids found us within minutes, their eyes going wide. Did you have a sleepover with Daddy? Leo asked. Sort of, I said carefully. We were talking very late and both fell asleep. Over breakfast, we had the conversation about how Dr. Hank would be taking over their therapy, about how sometimes adults who work together realize they care about each other in different ways. The kids absorbed it with surprising resilience. So can Miss Cora live here forever? Nico asked. We're working on that, Stefano said, his eyes meeting mine across the table. Over the next 2 months, we learned restraint. Dr. Hank took over the kids' sessions completely. I transitioned to a consulting role. My university approved it. And Stefano and I built a relationship in the spaces between responsibility. Dinners with the kids, weekend trips, late-night conversations after they were asleep. We kissed. A lot. But we kept our promise. It was torture. Beautiful, necessary torture. Then Romano fell. The information about Vieri reached the right people, and Romano's empire collapsed from within. Not with violence, not with blood, but with systematic destruction that left him alive but irrelevant. It worked, Stefano told me the night it was confirmed. Your way worked. Our way, I corrected. You chose not to go back on the deal. Because you showed me there was another option. He pulled me close. Can I finally take you on an actual date? I laughed. Yes, please. The date was perfect. An intimate restaurant where he'd once proposed to his wife, now becoming a place of new memories. He held my hand across the table and told me he loved me. I love you too, I whispered back. After, we went home together. The kids were asleep. Vera was in her quarters. There was no crisis waiting. No reason we couldn't finally finish what we'd started 2 months ago. We've done everything right, he said as we stood in his bedroom. Established boundaries, transitioned roles, put the kids first. We have, I agreed. So if I asked you to stay tonight, really stay? I'd say yes. I took his hand. I've been ready to say yes for 2 months. This time, when we fell into his bed together, there was nothing left to stop us. His hands learned me slowly, thoroughly. Mine learned him back. And when we finally came together, the moment faded into something private and perfect, and hours. I woke the next morning wrapped around him, sunlight streaming through the windows. "Morning," he murmured. "Morning." I tilted my head back to look at him. "No regrets?" "Not even one." He kissed me softly. "You?" "Just that we waited so long," I paused. "But also, grateful that we did. It made this mean more. Everything worth having costs something." 6 months later, I stood in my clinic on opening day, a space Stefano had funded, dedicated to trauma therapy for families who couldn't afford traditional services. He stood beside me, his hand at my back. The kids were with Vera. "You did this," he said quietly. "We did this." I leaned into him. That night, the kids presented me with a drawing of all 5 of us standing in front of the clinic. At the bottom, our family. "Is that okay?" Leo asked. "That we made you part of our family." I looked at Stefano. He was watching me with an expression that said everything we'd both stopped being afraid to feel. "It's more than okay," I said. "It's perfect." 6 months after that, Stefano asked me to marry him in the garden at sunset, while the kids played nearby. "I want to make this permanent," he said quietly. "Not because I'm afraid you'll leave, but because I want the world to know you're mine and I'm yours, and we chose this together." I said yes before he'd even finished. The wedding was small. Dr. Hank came. Vera cried. The kids served as our wedding party with enough enthusiasm to power a small city. When Stefano kissed me at the altar, I tasted promise and commitment, and the kind of love that's earned through crisis and choice. "Mrs. Barone," he murmured. "Dr. Hayes Barone," I corrected with a smile. I didn't go through all that school to drop my name entirely. He laughed, full and genuine and free. "My complicated, stubborn, brilliant wife," he said. "Your partner," I corrected. "In everything." "In everything," he agreed. I'd walked into Stefano Barone's world expecting to save 3 traumatized children. Instead, I'd found everything I didn't know I was looking for. Not perfectly, not without struggle, but with intention and love and the absolute certainty that some things are worth fighting for. I'd spent my childhood waiting for adults to keep their promises. Now I was the adult making them and keeping them. For the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting for someone else to show up. I was already home. Thank you for listening all the way to the end. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe so you don't miss the next Mafia love story. And tell me in the comments where you're listening from and what you thought of this narrator. Your feedback really helps me make these even better for you. Thank you for letting my stories keep you company. It truly means more than you know.